Hey, hello. How you guys doing? So here's the deal. We're doing another show, another live show right now. This will be the tape show because the actual live show we did, which some of you might have seen earlier, which we only did, a lot of you watched it live probably, took place only, what, 2 hours ago. I showed a beautiful goal by Pavel Datsyuk, who's playing in another league that I cannot mention, in another part of the world, and that other league that I will not mention in the other part of the world decided to block us because we showed a beautiful goal that was scored in that league that we cannot mention, that might make people actually interested in that league that we cannot mention, because had they seen that goal, they might say, hey, I want to watch some games from that league I cannot mention. But instead, you're just going to have to take our word for it that Pavel Datsyuk scored a goal in that league we cannot mention. That was beautiful, and but I wouldn't go supporting that league we cannot mention anymore.
Could it be because some of the members in that league that we cannot mention are taking a drug that we cannot mention?
Perhaps since we discussed the drug, that's possible. So anyway, let's just I mean, we're not hacked. We're not Donald Trump or the Democratic National Committee here. We haven't been hacked by Russian hackers. This is a YouTube thing. They're allowed to do this. It's their content.
Yep.
And I'm not taking against them, but I question whether or not it's the right thing from a business perspective to not allow a show that gets a lot of viewers to do that. But anyway, that's all we're going to say. We're going to leave it there, and we're going to do another show for you. So what we're going to do, this was supposed to be the Patreon show, okay, which was going to be for our supporters. So we had a guest lined up who's a Patreon guy. So I'm going to still invite him in, and we're still going to talk about what we're going to talk about on our Patreon only show. And our Patreon guys, I know you support us, but you'll understand that we have to do a show for everybody today. So we want to make sure that we do that. We'll have to do another Patreon only show, but we want to make sure that there's a show for people to watch when they get home from work and stuff like that, or then. So we're going to do a second show today. The first show, which was the greatest show we've ever done, is just in memory, and I might be able to actually get it, and we might be able to put a audio on the YouTube feed still. I'll check that out. Okay, I think I can get the audio from it because I think I have it. So anyway, for those of you who wanted to know, that's what we're gonna do, and we're gonna be taking questions in our Patreon thing. We're gonna do this a little bit. So it'll be a little bit different kind of show today. All we talked about in the first show was we talked about what did we talk about again? We talked about the Flyers jerseys.
Yep.
And we talked about that's so funny. With all the stuff I forgot what we even talked about.
ESPN Prospect.
ESPN Prospects is what we're going to get into.
We only talked about the top one.
We're going to get into that now in depth because Mike has the whole list. And
and I tried to get into it, but I'm not an insider. So Mike will bring up the hot button ones that we talked about yesterday offline.
And we'll discuss it. So
Mike
that's
remembers everything. He'll know.
if you're an ESPN insider, and if you're not an ESPN insider, you might want to become one. Of course, if we hadn't tell you about this ESPN insider list, you wouldn't know that. So therefore, ESPN's getting more insiders from this because of us, and that's one reason ESPN might be okay with us talking about their list.
If we do this, we're probably going to get blocked by ESPN.
There is such a thing called as fair use. We are a news show, and as a news show, we are entitled to fair use. And by showing that, there is an argument to be made that we're not. All we're doing with that is reporting news by showing that link. So this is I know a lot of guys who do podcasts, and it kind of consider it a badge of honor to be blocked by a content provider, because that means that someone actually thinks that what you do could possibly affect their revenue streams.
Right.
So the KHL's afraid of us at HockeyBuzz. That's what's happening. The KHL's afraid of us. There you go. No, sorry. It looked a lot better in the first show too. Since then, I went and picked up my kid, and my air conditioner decided to die, which is awesome. So it's like 900 degrees outside here. So I'm driving along, and I hear the sound, and the fan just stops.
So maybe the KHL hacked your air conditioner.
That's probably what happened. I think the league we cannot mention may have hacked it. By mentioning that other league, we could be potentially banned. So I hope you guys are enjoying this. I'm going to tweet this out so people know what the hell's going on out there.
All right, let's talk about the list.
And then we'll get into the list. Okay, so give me 1 second here, and then we'll get into it. So I think I wanted to also mention this funny thing I was going to talk about on the other show if we had a chance to talk about it, and I'm going to also get our guest on here too. Was I saw that Genesis documentary where all the original members are sitting down talking.
Yeah.
Right, and I had never actually seen that before. Like, I saw that this past weekend. I know it's an old one, but
yeah,
really, and we're all Genesis fans here, so I had to bring it up. So it's funny because it really does. In that, you really do get a sense that Tony Banks is a bit of an ass.
Well,
like,
Tony,
Good.
You get
No.
you get a sense that Tony Banks and Peter Gabriel just don't like each
They
other.
can't stand each other, and then when you hear some of the stuff Tony Banks says as it goes along, you start like, man, he's, I mean, I'm sure Peter is a hell of a lot to deal with. He's got an ego probably. Even though I'm a huge Peter Gabriel fan, but that if you watch the thing, it's on Amazon. You can watch it.
What I learned from it was it's not Phil and Peter that are at odds. I always thought it was.
Yeah, that would be the natural thing to think of, right?
It's Tony that's at odds.
It's Tony and Peter.
Yes.
And Tony gets it, but even when Tony talks about his solo albums, he's like weird, and the whole interview is strange.
The funny thing is that Tony Banks is befuddled at why his solo albums weren't as successful as Mike Rutherford with Mike and the Mechanics, or even Steve Hackett. Steve Hackett had a pretty decent solo career after Genesis, or Gabriel or Collins.
There's a big reason. It just wasn't good.
Right. It wasn't good at all.
Right. It wasn't, and they even, like, Tony Banks even says, we wanted Phil to do well, but we didn't want him to do that well. It was like, really, I'm like, what the hell is wrong? It was like there was some weird stuff.
Like Phil to be like one of the best songwriters of his era.
Oh, by far, and it just makes you think, like, man, it's like, because this is a band I really would like to see. This is the one band in my lifetime that I would like to see reunite and play. Like, I've seen everybody else.
Okay, but this is the thing, and I haven't seen it, but it's on YouTube, so we can't play it, or Genesis.
Sure as they'll know.
Right, but Phil Collins performed at the opening of the new U.S. Open arena in was it Flushing?
Yeah.
Okay, and apparently did In the Air Tonight and had Daryl Sturmer and a few other people. And I've been told by somebody who's a big Genesis / Phil Collins fan that it wasn't bad, but it wasn't, And I'm like, you know what? He says it paled in comparison to what happened in 2007 or 2009 when they toured last. And I'm like, I have been a big critic of that tour because that was possibly the worst Genesis show I saw because... It
really wasn't. I was at that tour. I still disagree with you.
I know. But if it's worse than 2009, which of course it probably is because Phil is 7 years older, then I don't want to watch it.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I don't know.
I just felt bad that he was doing the Open for the U.S. Open. Like, it's just not a good spot for Phil Collins.
Right. All right, let me invite Mike, and then we're going to get into this thing here. We want to, he'll help us. Before we do it, let's bring him in because I did promise I wanted to bring him on. He's a supporter. We really appreciate it.
Okay.
In a big way. So let me get him in here, and then we'll get into. You can tease what we're going to talk about, Mike, a little bit while I'm doing this. Why don't you do that?
Okay. Like I said, ESPN has released in the last couple days on their Insider column a 1 through 30 list of the organizations in the NHL, the strength of their prospect pool, and the top 120 prospects in the NHL. Not including that league in.
Right, and Corey Proman's the one that ranks.
Corey Proman is the one that does the ranking. And last year, the Edmonton Oilers were the highest ranked organization, mostly on the strength of Connor McDavid, but that's understandable. There were a few other prospects. Toronto was second. This year, Toronto has ascended to first with Matthews, Marner, and Nylander, 3 players in their top 10. But when he did the individual rankings, Patrick Laine, second overall pick of the Winnipeg Jets, who I think the only pre-draft list that had him ahead of Matthews was, what, ISS, Russ?
Yeah.
They're the only ones. So, you remember, Matthews was under in terms of the NHL rankings from Central Scouting, Matthews was under European, not North American, and he was ahead of Laine on the European. So nobody had him ahead, but this listing had Laine as the number 1 ranked player. And in my opinion, I think it was more done for shock value and clickbait than anything.
Yeah, I mean, again, Matthews is faster. Matthews plays in traffic. I've seen Matthews push away guys to get shots on goal. He continuously does wraparounds and plays down low. He'll streak down the ice and try and run over the opposition. None of these strike me as being a finesse guy, which is what you said. He was like he's written him as a skill guy, and he's not James Van Riemsdyk. James Van Riemsdyk is a skill guy who's big, but rarely has contact once in a while. Matthews has more contact than James Van Riemsdyk. He does.
Yeah, here, I'll quote it directly. He's not really a physical player who will grind for pucks along the wall, nor is he some sort of defensive stalwart. And that's the funny thing because, I mean, at the World Hockey Championships, watching it on television, seeing commentators like Ray Ferraro, a former NHLer who knows a little bit about the game, and him commenting many times about how Matthews, for being an 18-year-old, was highly developed as a two-way player. And Matthews saying that the players that he emulates are Jonathan Taves and Anze Kopitar. Not exactly like big-time scorers. These are guys who are two-way guys.
Right. Well, the other thing is this. Since when do guys like Joe Thornton and other big centermen grind it a lot along the wall? That is not their job. So, like, even to mention that to me is sort of like just creating something about Matthews that doesn't exist. Nobody's going to want Matthews to grind it along the wall. That's not – if he's doing that, he's not scoring. And he's going to be one of the best scorers. So most of the time he is going to get fed the puck.
Yeah,
and somebody else will be grinding it along the wall to get it to him.
Yeah, and I think the critique of Line A is fair because essentially it says is that he's a big power winger, special forward. I agree with that. I think he's going to be an excellent NHL player. But this thing is that he's got broad shoulders and great core strength, and he's going to shrug off checks left and right and all this stuff. I'm like, okay, but the thing is that he may do that, but Matthews, the reason he doesn't have to do that is because he avoids that contact.
Because he's way faster. If anybody saw the video that Chris Johnston put up today, and it shows him how he has this amazing lateral movement and can stop on a dime to get around a defenseman, why would he engage contact? The whole thing's just dumb. That's all.
Totally. All right. I invited Mike. So Mike, the other Mike out there who was interested in coming in to our show, and now we're going to get into this list. Could you put the link in again? Because I am an ESPN insider, so I can also watch it as well.
See, Russ feels left out. He's not an insider.
I'm sorry, Russ.
I don't feel left out, as a matter of fact.
I can probably give you.
I don't care.
Anyway, no, I'm going to give it.
I don't want it.
No, I'm going to give you some. You can't. You can put it. All right, it's fine. So be that way. All right. Let me see. Let me see if this works.
Mike knows what I have issues with.
Oh, hey. No, mine does not work. Are you there? Oh, so we got Mike. Oh, we got another guy. Do we have somebody else? I thought I heard somebody else. That was you. Sorry. We're all messed up today. I apologize. If you're just joining us, we're doing the second show we did today, and we had an issue with the first show, which you may have seen live, but we're doing the second show now. And so let's I'm having problems with this as
Mike,
well.
bring up a couple. Mike,
so give us some other names from this list, Mike, that you think are kind of interesting.
Okay. And I will. Well, okay. It was very heavy on 2016 picks. One of the things that I was critical of is the fact that players who had good years in junior as 19-year-olds, their rankings went down. And I focused on Maple Leafs because that's the team that I cover. And a player like Jeremy Bracco, we're not going to talk extensively on him, but I'm just saying a player like Jeremy Bracco, who was ranked in the top 40 last year and had a really good year with the Kitchener Rangers in the OHL. His ranking went down to 67, and I just thought that was a little bizarre that players like that, unless the player made the NHL or exceeded in the AHL, even though they stayed in junior, it reflected their ranking going down. Well, anyway. The top three selections were all 2016 draft picks, but the third overall pick, Pierre-Luc Dubois, was not one of them. He was ranked 8th. And I know that Russ said that he saw Pierre-Luc Dubois at the Upper Deck event in Toronto on Monday, and that he is significantly bigger and stronger than he was just a few months ago.
Yeah, I thought he was like 3 to 5 pounds of muscle, and he said it was more like 9 to 10. And
Yeah.
it looks like Vinny LeCavalier, even though he's a couple inches shorter, he looks about the same thickness that Vinny was sort of, in the middle of his career. And so he really looks like now that he has bulked up to play the center position. To have him eighth just is mind-boggling. Mike can name you some of the guys ahead of him. It doesn't make sense.
Well, and this was the thing that was puzzling. And again, Leaf related. Mitch Marner won every conceivable MVP award last year. He won the OHL MVP, CHL MVP,
Yeah.
the OHL Playoff MVP, and the Memorial Cup MVP, and won a Memorial Cup.
Right.
And he went down a spot to
He
fifth.
didn't do enough, Mike.
Yeah, he didn't do enough.
He could have done better.
And Dylan Strome, who was ranked 7th and did not have that great of a year for, he's a very good young prospect, but he didn't. Nobody said he had a phenomenal year with the Erie Otters last year. He went up to 4th. He's ahead of Marner. So that's what I mean. It's a very subjective list, and I'm not criticizing Corey because he's.
I will, because like Dylan Strome, just as an example, even if he's gained more strength like I think he has, right now, this moment, I would still take Pierre-Luc Dubois over Dylan Strome. And it's not to denigrate Dylan Strome, it's just to tell you what I think Pierre-Luc Dubois will be. And that's like right at this moment, because I think Dubois is going to make Columbus, and I think this is what we're talking about, 2 players that are probably both going to make their teams, but I just like Dubois better. I don't know where Dylan Strome got to be 4th. I just don't.
Yeah. So I mean, that's sort of the thing I quibble about with this list is that I think Dylan Strome is going to be a very good NHL player. I really do.
Me too.
And he's got the size, and I think he'll have to get a little stronger. And there are some question marks regarding Marner. But if you're basing it on the difference between last year and this year, where Marner won everything and played better than Strome at the World Junior in Helsinki,
Yeah.
and still Marner goes down and still Strome goes up, that makes me question the criteria here. A player that you and I are both high on, Russ, in Clayton Keller, was ranked 6th. And I like him. And there was a report yesterday, and it's a little confusing. There was a report out there that Keller had received an offer, a pro offer from the Coyotes, even before he playing his first year in the NCAA, which is a little strange because you would think that if he had made the decision that there was, he wasn't going to even be tempted by a pro offer.
Well, I guess when he said that he was 99% going to college, and that sort of left the door open for everybody, I think. And so that's probably why they did it, just to sort of cover their bases. But I think in a year, Clayton Keller will be in the NHL. And so why he's 6th, I don't know.
Well, I mean, and that goes along with somebody like Kyle Connor, who after his freshman year signed the contract. I mean, that may be the long-term effect of the whole Jimmy Vesey thing. Are these players who are NCAA players that teams draft, even though they have that 4-year window of eligibility, teams are now going to be scared because if these players get to their senior year, they're so close to becoming unrestricted free agents that teams are going to, after 1 or 2 years, sign them and get them locked up.
Yep.
Oh, I agree. I mean, I think, and I'm sorry, I'm just getting our guy in here. So I really think that we talked to him. Kevin, Allen was talking about that whole college rule and how he should perhaps change it, and I don't know, I don't think it can be changed.
Not going to change it.
I don't think it can be changed, right? Because of the whole concept of it.
Well, it can't be changed until the new CBA. But the thing is, if it isn't changed in the new CBA, I mean, I think there have been players out there who have been traded in deals in the past where teams couldn't get them signed under contract, and essentially they know that they're not going to be able to get them signed, and they're just included in deals. I think that's probably going to be more common going forward because if a team has don't you think Nashville is a little regretful that they didn't trade VC last year in retrospect, because all they did was get the 3rd round pick that they drafted him with 4 years ago. And there was the promise of getting him signed, and we'll see how good of a player he is. But at his peak value, if they would have traded him last summer, they probably could have gotten a first or a second round pick or a high prospect, and that teaches other teams a lesson.
Yeah, it's hard though because they really were hoping. So.
And how many players really will fit into this category? I mean, this is
it's
really.
not going to be guys every year, that's for sure.
I mean, most of the guys are not gonna do this. Most of the guys
one guy comes up every 2 or 3 years. So it was Mike Riley, and then it was DC. We don't know who the next one's going to be.
Yeah, we don't know who the next one.
Bring up another contested one, Mike.
Okay. Well.
Another contestant on today's is Russ Wright.
Yeah. Sebastian Aho.
Yeah.
Sebastian Aho of the Finnish Sebastian Aho, the forward who was a draft pick of the Carolina Hurricanes, is ranked 10th. Now he had a great World Junior.
Yep, won a gold medal, all that.
Gold medal. But he was 54th last year, and on the strength of a great World Junior, goes up to 10th.
And who's 11th?
And 11th is Alex Nylander, the first-round pick of the Buffalo Sabres, who had a good but not great year with Mississauga, but had a good World Junior with Sweden, especially after his brother got injured.
And who's 12th?
12th is Zach Werenski.
Yeah. So Zach Werenski I would put ahead of the players you just mentioned.
Yeah, where would he fall? I just got the list up finally myself here, so I have it.
Well, Zach Werenski won a Calder Cup, and is for most experts' determination, is going to be part of the starting six for the Blue Jackets this year. Aho might make the Hurricanes, probably will, but might. And Alex Nylander is going to start his career in the AHL.
Right.
So,
and I just saw Werenski, and he looks just as big as ever. He looks really fit. And at the end of the day, I would have him ranked ahead of both those guys because he will have more impact at the NHL level than both those guys. Clearly he's going to have more impact than Nylander because Nylander's not going to have any impact.
Okay, I dropped off for a second, so we'll keep going here.
Yep.
Tyson Yost was 15th. Now, he has not played. He's going. I believe is it North Dakota, Russ, that he's going to, or
Yep.
Now he played in the BCHL. Didn't even play in the CHL. He's playing in a second level league. It was a rather a high draft pick, but he's going to be playing U.S. college. But he's ranked 15th, and he's ranked ahead of Mikko Rantanen, first-round pick from the Avalanche, Daniel Sprung, and Ivan Provorov.
Yeah, I like Jost is the way I've always heard it pronounced. I like him a lot. In the under-18s, there was nothing he could do wrong. He was a great all-around player, really good fire starter on offense. But I still would take Rantanen and Provorov ahead of him. And I think he'd be right there. I think he would just be a few picks down. But, Rantanen is inches from making the NHL, and Provorov has again, he's inches away too. So I look at it and I just say, I get what you like about Jost for the future because he has all of these intangibles, but he's further along. He's farther off.
Okay, so have you gotten all of them so far up to 15? The gist of it. The one I saw, Matthew Barzal at 13.
We've been jumping around.
That one kind of struck me. That's all I was thinking.
As what though? Too high or too low?
As a little. Well, I guess a little too close to number one. Is you want to call that too low?
Okay, too low. No, you know what? I just saw Barzal, and I posted a picture on Twitter so people could see it. He looks so fit compared to what he used to be, just bigger. And that was the only thing this guy was lacking. He's a tremendous vision and speed and everything else. So you know what? I would put Barzal there, and I wouldn't have an issue.
No, okay. Here was the one that Russ and I reacted, I think, most vociferously to. If because we were at the combine and we were both at the draft, and the talk was that Miguel Sergachev, who ended up being the first-round pick of the Montreal Canadiens, and Olli Juolevi, who won a Memorial Cup with the London Knights and was I think 5th overall for Vancouver, were very close. Sergachev, I think, went 9th.
Right.
On this list, Ulevy was listed 14th, and Sergachev was listed 38th. There is not that wide of a disparity of difference between these two defensemen.
No, and Sergachev could very well play this year for Montreal. Like, it's just, I don't get it. I really don't. And I like Ulevy better. I do like his measurables better. But for this year's impact, I'm going to take Sergachev every time.
Well, and this is the thing, and when we were looking at this, we were looking for like a listing of the criteria of what.
Yeah.
It's similar to that Hockey News poll.
What we did yesterday, that did the top 50 players again, because I wasn't here when you guys did that with Ovechkin not being in the top 10, and I was just,
Right, it's similar to that list where we don't know whether it's based on the last year or based on the last 3 years. We don't know what
100 monkeys typing at 100 typewriters.
Right, we don't know what exactly is the criteria that's being used to determine the ranking here. But if it's a player who was not previously ranked and then entered in the thing, that's one thing. But when you have a player, like I said, like Bracco, who was ranked in the 30s and then had a good year in the OHL and then is ranked in the 60s, it just doesn't add up. So that's why I question some of the rankings.
I mean,
go ahead, Ek.
There's a lot of 18, 19, and 20, but then there's like a guy like there's a 21-year-old, here in like in Buchnevich, in Pavel Buchnevich.
Right, and the funny thing about Buchnevich is we got a good look at him like 2 years ago in the World Juniors.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't get a great look at him last year. I know someone who covers that other league.
Mm-hmm.
And he wasn't even getting top line play until close to the end of the season. So I think he's going to be a really good player. I don't think he's a superstar. And so I think where he's ranked is okay, but I just think we haven't seen enough of him to really sort of rank him ahead of some other bigger names. Like an example, Mike, where do we say Anthony Mantha was?
I think he was in the 40s.
He's in the 40s, and he's a guy that had a terrific season in the AHL. His second year, right? That was his second AHL season, coming off an injury, too. He had a broken leg, right, the first year?
Right.
Yes.
And then, and so I don't understand it. Guys, this close to the NHL. Matter of fact, when he played against the Flyers, he was really wreaking havoc out there. He was just a little bit like the brain couldn't keep up with the body, and so just couldn't put it away that game. But he was close to scoring a couple of goals in that game.
He really was, yeah.
Well, here's, and I know when I mentioned this one, Russ, that you reacted, especially since you'd seen him. Pavel Zacha was ranked 35th.
So let's talk about Pavel Zacha. So I interviewed Pavel Zacha, and he is massive. Like, he was already a tall guy, but now he's really wide. This kid has worked out ridiculously hard.
6'3", 209, according to this.
Yeah.
6'3", 209.
And he's all that. Like, I mean, he was the biggest guy there by far at the at the rookie showcase. Like, he really just looked like an NHLer, right? And I talked to him about playing with Taylor Hall, and he's thrilled at the prospect. And with the Tanner, and we watched him just going through drills, right? Because they were shooting guys going through drills. And people were like, oh, my God, look at the speed and agility on this guy at this size.
Right.
I mean, so...
Remember we watched him in preseason last year?
Yes. Yeah.
We watched him in preseason. Or was it preseason still, right?
Yeah, he was preseason, I believe.
It was preseason, right? So we were watching this. Sorry, weird echo.
Because he only played one regular season game, I think.
You guys getting that echo?
Not anymore.
Okay, I'm getting the echo still. But yeah, I'll continue talking over it. Maybe when Mike comes back, it'll go away. It does. Isn't that strange? Anyway, there was an echo until you came back, Mike. Oddly enough, for me.
It was echoing. That's why I dropped off.
It was so strange. And then when you dropped off, it got worse. And then you came back and got better. Anyway, let's just not worry about that. So Pavel Zacha, we were watching, and we were both excited. You were especially excited to watch it and see him play. And New Jersey did that thing that teams do, where they bring up where they didn't give him any really meaningful minutes. They just played him. They played him. They didn't play him on the power play much. They played him on like the fourth line.
Yeah.
To me, when you're going to have a guy like this and you have a preseason game, why aren't you playing him top minutes and see?
Because
is it that you're afraid he's going to do too well and your fans are going to be like, oh, we need to play him?
No, I think that's because they had already determined that they were going to send him back to Sarnia. That's why. I think that's sort of if you don't do that, that's sort of like, and I always bring this example up. In 2009, in his draft year, Nazem Kadri stood on his head at training camp, and all Leaf fans were saying, "This guy's got to make it," and the Leafs sent him back to London,
Right.
and everybody had a hissy fit because he had a great camp. Well, they had determined that he was going to go back, and that's probably what Ray Shero had determined, that for his development he needs to go back. And the thing was, he had a great year in the OHL, and then he plays the last game of the regular season with the Devils against Toronto, and I think he had an assist in that game.
2 points.
2 points. So I think that was the proper method of development for the Devils with Staka.
But this guy's like a no-brainer. Gonna play this year, and he's got him ranked 38th.
We have our guest.
Everybody's got the right to their own rank. Hey, how are you?
Hey, how are you?
Good, guys. How are you?
Good, Mike. So it's Mike. We're being joined by Mike. Mike's a Patreon subscriber, and this was supposed to be a Patreon-only show for those of you just joining us. Unfortunately, we were banned. The KHL stepped in and changed that. Oh, that league we cannot mention stepped in and changed that earlier, and so we're doing another real show for everybody. But we wanted to have Mike on anyway. And Mike, thanks for supporting the show first and foremost.
We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on.
Of course, no problem.
And we can't have enough mics on the show. I mean, that's clear.
Yeah. So Mike is a Penguins fan, correct?
Yes.
So let's find some Penguins players on this list to discuss for a second, shall we?
Okay. Sprong is on there.
Right, Sprong. Now, did we get into Sprong? You guys got into Sprong?
No, we didn't get into Sprong.
Okay,
What was he, 19th or something?
Let me pull it up 1 second. I believe he was.
Yeah, he's pretty high. It was yeah, I got it right. I'm trying to get through it here. He was like let's say 9th, 10th. Yeah, he was 16th.
16th.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he got NHL experience last year. There's no reason he shouldn't this year. And people were wondering when he got sent down, well, how's he going to react? And he had a phenomenal year, like just a phenomenal year. And didn't he play in the AHL as well, right? So he literally played in like every league you could play in last year. I
mean, the Penguins have had such an influx of young players last year. Obviously, we saw them all in the playoffs. They were such a huge portion of this. Sprong? What are your thoughts on where does Sprong fit in that whole scheme of things? I mean, the Penguins are a little bit of an oiled machine right now.
Well, they are and they aren't. We don't know if Connor Sheary's going to pick up where he left off.
Right.
Right. You got to remember, Eck, is that that influx of youngsters, as you're talking about, were not guys who were considered top-rated prospects. You're talking about Kuhnhackl. You're talking about Sheary. You're talking about Rust. I mean, these are guys. They were role players in the AHL. They came up and they fit into a certain role with the Penguins. But Sprong is a second-round pick who they think should have been a first-round pick.
Yeah.
And with proper development is probably could be a top 6 forward going forward.
I mean, even as a rookie, 5 goals in 10 games in the AHL playoffs, 7 points. I mean, that was his AHL experience. That's good enough to get him a long run through camp and preseason games again. And look, at the end of the day, he's a first or a second liner. But even if he were to play third line this year on that team, he would be an upgrade to some of the other guys if his offense comes through. So he's certainly going to get every opportunity.
He's a good two-way player?
Yeah, he's a good two-way player. Now, he's probably not to the degree of a Kuhnhackl, who is really physical, but Sprong has gotten better on defense, and I think he's good enough. I don't think he's great, but I think he's good enough.
But he's too young to be able to. He would have to go back to Charlottetown. He won't turn 20 until March.
He can go to the AHL, right?
So, no, he cannot go to the AHL.
Right, until his league's over. Yeah. The only other player I found on this list was Jake Getzel.
Right.
Who was number 106, a center from I guess Omaha, a University of Nebraska Omaha player. So Mike, are you a lifelong Pittsburgh Penguins fan or?
Absolutely. Born in Pittsburgh, raised in Pittsburgh, lived in Pittsburgh my whole life. Yes.
Yes. Hello from the other side of the state.
Jeez, I'm in Pittsburgh way too much. I probably go to Pittsburgh once or twice a year now. It's crazy.
No,
Russ is as sick of Pittsburgh as he is of Buffalo.
I like Pittsburgh. The people are nice. The food's good, and I'll be there for the outdoor game for sure.
Yeah.
That'll be fun. I mean, that'll be a really good outdoor game. I I wish they would have done it at PNC just to switch it up, although I like where the Steelers play, and I've skated on the ice, and it is really good. You get a cool feeling in that circular. But I think at PNC you might have gotten some really better views, but oh well.
I don't know. I mean, I think the football stadiums are better than view-wise than the baseball stadiums, personally. Just so far. I mean, depending on where you sit, of course, it depends.
Yeah,
like, there's some better seats overall in a baseball stadium if you're in the infield. There's places like you're high up, certain spots. But then there's the entire outfield in baseball stadiums like useless.
Well, we'll find out what it's like in a soccer stadium because the BMO Field in Toronto, where the Leafs and the Red Wings are playing on New Year's Day, was primarily for the Toronto FC
right.
MLS club.
Right.
And
I just passed that the other day going into Toronto, and my thought was, boy, that's a lot of open air, more than even like football stadiums. People are going to freeze their asses off.
and it is right off the lake. It is.
It is. They are really going to freeze for that game.
It's going to be. Well, it should be, right? I mean,
I don't know. How cold do you want to get? I mean,
well, Russ,
media will be in like a warm, secluded press box.
Yeah, I better be in the press box, Russ.
I want to watch people freezing outside. That's what I want to do when I go.
I wore a snowsuit in Edmonton because that press box was a little press box in Commonwealth Stadium, and so you had to go outside pretty much if you wanted to see something. But you're right. That will be warmer, although the one in Manitoba might be colder. But that is right off the lake. It is going to be cold, man.
I've always wanted to ask a Penguins fan this. I have a couple friends who I've talked to about this. So this season was sort of a weird gift in a way, wasn't it? I mean, you really didn't see this coming, right?
It was really crazy. I was just talking about early in the season how Crosby was struggling, and they finally made the coaching change, which needed to be made.
Yeah.
Before the season even started, in my opinion,
Yeah.
and they just caught fire, and I didn't see this coming, really. I thought halfway through the year that, maybe they should just pack it in and try to get that first-round pick from Toronto in the Kessel deal, but they caught fire, and, they just couldn't be stopped.
It was fun to watch. I mean, from a Flyers fan perspective, horrifying.
Yeah.
Fun to watch.
I spoke to Bo Bennett, right, one-on-one at the media day before the Cup, and he said for that first half of the season they were fragile mentally, and that was the biggest problem. Was anytime they fell behind, they just crumbled, and so a lot of that did change when Sullivan came, and just a little bit of confidence got bred into them because they just lacked confidence. He said, and I was a little surprised at that because how could you have guys like Crosby and Malkin and guys like that and lack confidence, but they clearly did. And if you watch their games, I'm sure Mike will attest to this, they really didn't come back from behind most of that first half of the season.
Even last year, they didn't come back from being down at all, and that's normally a staple of the Penguins with all of the talent that they have. They're usually never out of games, and even last year, it showed. I don't know if they came back, and I don't think they came back in any game where they were down going in the third period last year. I think it's all a matter of coaching and motivation, and I guess Johnston wasn't sending the right message, and got a new voice in the room, and Sullivan, he did an amazing job, and I can't give enough credit to Rutherford for the moves that he made. I mean, he was brilliant this year.
And it's so funny because we were really busting on him. I mean, early in the year, it looked like, he was just doing, it was like, okay, he's going to be, I remember talking about it, he's going to be there for 2 years, but it looks like he's only going to be there for 2 years. He's acting like he's only going to be there for 2 years. He's really not.
Well, that first round of trades wasn't good. Then the second round of trades was good.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. And he shifted his gears pretty quickly. He made, and I've always thought of Rutherford as one of the best trading GMs out there, but I was, I even was doubting him in the beginning of the year, but then, man, oh man, talk about a turnaround. And it's just ironic that this is the second time the Penguins have done this, basically, where they've had they've fired a coach in the middle of the season, gone on to win the Stanley Cup, in a very short period of time.
Yeah.
That happened with my buddy Michel Therrien before, and
your buddy.
This time around, hopefully he can't ban us from YouTube. No, but just I don't know. Yes, but watching this team, what are your thoughts on the goaltending situation? Obviously, Marc-Andre Fleury, it's so weird the way they're acting about it to me. They're acting like, oh yeah, no, we're going with these guys, and we're not going to trade anybody no matter what. And then on the same time, well, maybe at the trade deadline we'll trade somebody because we have to what are your thoughts on the goaltending situation?
Well, I think at some point they're going to have to trade Fleury just because of the expansion draft. I can't see them losing Murray with how affordable he is right now, and at the level that he played. I mean, he was amazing throughout the playoffs and through the second half of the season. I think you're going to have to trade Fleury at some point this year.
Yeah.
I do agree with them using both goaltenders because they played 106 games last year.
Yep.
And they're going to have to split some time just so they stay fresh throughout the year.
Totally.
But I think at some point you're going to have to trade Fleury and roll with Matt Murray, and I just think that's.
I'm not 100% with that. I think if they feel like they're going to need them both to make that full cup run, they could afford to keep Fleury, and then they could just leave him exposed and let Vegas get him. And I think
they leave him exposed. Doesn't he have a no movement clause?
Are they allowed to leave him exposed? I didn't think they were allowed.
I don't think they are because he's got a no movement clause, right? So I think
unless he waives the no movement.
Unless he waives it, and I think he would waive it. I do.
Okay.
Because I think he wants to be a starter. So I do think
if he doesn't waive it, maybe Matt Murray gets picked up and he is a starter. So it's kind of a.
They would have to protect Fleury if he doesn't waive the no move clause. So.
Right.
So I mean I think that's why right now both sides are keeping things on a sort of friendly level because
they have to. Yeah.
I mean and this is the thing: does Marc-Andre Fleury want to go to the Las Vegas expansion franchise that is going to probably be a losing franchise for 3 or 4 years, or at the trade deadline does he want to potentially go to a team that needs goaltending that has a chance to win a Stanley Cup like the Dallas Stars? Or somebody else like that, he would probably waive the no-move clause to go to a competitive team. But if it gets to the expansion part of it, then maybe,
I still think he would. I think he would waive it at that point because I know he's a competitor.
Yeah.
If he goes through another season where he's not the starter, I think he would be anxious to get out.
Right.
Also, Dallas is, I think it's going to be a race between him and Bishop to Dallas. Like, one of them's ending up there, and whoever, maybe.
Who's taking the other? Like, they
the other one's going. The other one's going to Vegas. I think that's how it's going to play out. I think that
St. Louis.
Maybe St. Louis. I mean, that's possible.
Calgary.
At some point, St. Louis could use Binnington. Calgary has their goalie, and I'll tell you this.
Calgary's got Brian Elliott.
No, but wait. I was just watching John Gillies at the NHL Rookie Showcase, and he's completely healthy.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, he's a big kid. He's 6'5". He really looks good. And so John Gillies could be the X factor there where you don't worry about Elliott long-term anymore.
Okay. I'll buy that.
But I mean,
if you're trying to sell me Elliott as the number one goaltender, then I got a bridge in Brooklyn to sell you.
Yeah. Now they are going to have issues because they have lots of players they have to sign, no matter what they do. And they are going to this year is a kind of a year where the Penguins get another pass at doing what they did last year because they have everybody signed and they're okay. But next year, cap-wise, they're going to have problems because they've got a lot of guys coming up.
And here's the thing: I don't think a Vegas team would take either Dallas goalie. I really don't.
No.
Yeah, I don't think they would either. So I mean, I think you're going to see the Penguins. They're going to. I do think that there's going to be an off-season issue next year, and whether or not that becomes Malkin or not is the big question, right? Because that, I can tell you, Malkin, the Malkin stuff that Rutherford were saying, oh, we never know. That was not the case. There were discussions about Malkin with other teams. Now, whether
he wanted to kill it quickly after nothing was happening.
Right, and he did that. And Malkin, I mean, when what I heard, Malkin at one point did want to go, and then Malkin decided he didn't want to go after they won the Stanley Cup. And but during the playoffs, there were points at which there were definitely talks going on. And so now when you look at all the players they have to sign next year, that what would your thoughts be on if Malkin's the player that has to go?
Well, I don't think there are very many players that they have to sign besides really Bonino and Daly. I mean, Chris Kunitz next year. I think his.
Let me go through that list because someone was telling me that there was more than that. I might be wrong, but that it was really going to be an issue for sure. But I will.
But there are some unrestricted free agents that you do have to sign. They took care of Mata during the season.
Right.
Got him signed long term. Justin Schultz is going to be another one. I'm not sure what you do with him.
Right, you have three defensemen: Schultz, Pouliot, Dumoulin, who are all RFA. Daly is a UFA. Matt Murray is an RFA. Shiri and Oscar Sundquist are RFA, and then you have Cullen, Benino, Kunitz, and Dupuis are UFA.
The problem is too, even with Murray as an RFA, if he were to get to like third round of the playoffs or the Cup again, he's not taking a bridge deal.
Right.
Right.
I mean, you're talking about going from an entry-level deal making less than $700,000 a year to him making $4 to $5 million on a long-term deal, which makes it imperative that they move Fleury because they have to clear the cap.
That's what would happen if he has another really successful season.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what you have to do. I mean, and we know what's interesting about Matt Murray is we're going to see him in the World Cup. We're going to see him right now.
Well, it would almost benefit them, Ak, in a way, to split the goaltending between Fleury and Murray, because if they do that, then it might be plausible for them to give him a bridge deal, because they can say, okay, well, you won a Stanley Cup, but we only split the duties with you with Fleury, and we'll give you some money, we'll give you a couple years, but we're not going to give you that long-term deal.
No, I don't think it would be because of that. I think it would be because if they were going to trade Fleury next year, then let Fleury play a lot of games before he gets traded. I think that's what it would be.
Right, to keep his value high.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they're going to be fun to watch. I mean, they were just so unbelievably unbeatable at the end of last year. I mean, they were tearing through teams. I remember the Flyers were playing really well. They had won a bunch of games in a row, and Pittsburgh came to town and just destroyed them. And it was one of these things where you could see at that point, and the fascinating thing of how the Islanders avoided the Penguins at the end of the year because people just were afraid of them. I mean,
and I do like their pretzel bits and cheese in the press box. Like they used better cheese than a cheese whiz. They did, and so I give them full marks for that.
Yes, that's true. The pretzel bits were okay.
Did they have hot dogs?
Cheese is famous here.
Did they have hot dogs in the press box, Russ?
Did they what?
Have hot dogs in the press box?
No, I didn't.
No, they did not. No, that's rare. That's rare these days.
Yeah.
I loved going to Pittsburgh and the hotel. I just like the whole area downtown. It's really a lot of fun, and just in general, like staying at that hotel. For as many games as I got to stay there for, which was I stayed like 4 or 5 nights there, I think, and I really got familiar with my surroundings to the point where I'm like, I feel like I live in this place because you just knew where everything was, and it's so easy to walk to anything. I mean, it's a great downtown area. It's really underrated as a city within the downtown spot.
I agree.
So I do want to talk about the Devils rumor really quickly because we talked about it in the last show, and of course the last show doesn't exist anymore. So I'll talk about that before we get out of here today. So I've been hearing that the Devils are definitely looking at defensemen, and they've made some moves, obviously moving their top defenseman Larson out, which was a great trade. No one can fault them for, but they do now have, I think, some big holes, and we talked about this in the last show that doesn't exist anymore. But the idea here is they feel very much like where the Islanders were a few years ago when the Islanders signed, Boychuk and Leddy, to the point where you look at Cam Fowler is somebody that I know the Devils really want, and he becomes their top defenseman if they get him. And then after that, you've got guys like Chris Russell, you've got Dennis Seidenberg, who lives in New Jersey, South Jersey, granted, but still is a New Jersey resident.
Seidenberg's really done though. No offense to him, but
it feels like he is done too. I do agree, but they're going to need somebody in New Jersey to help. I mean, he can still maybe help the power play. Seidenberg, he still has some speed.
A signing of Seidenberg even to a PTO would be like the Edmonton Oilers bringing in Andrew Ferentz, who was basically done when they signed him.
Right. I mean, you got Nikitin out there, and I know a lot of people had issues with Nikitin, but
Nikitin's not playing in the NHL anymore.
All right, so
I don't think so.
Kyle
Quincy, right? You mentioned Kyle Quincy as well. Willie Mitchell. There's some players, defensemen out there, correct? But I think the thing at the end of the day, I do look to the Devils, and remember that Islanders trade when they picked up those two guys happened on October 4th, so right before the season started.
Yeah, and what
that I think could happen here.
And what I asserted in the show that doesn't exist anymore was the fact that the Devils are just starting to reaccumulate prospects after being pretty stripped bare. I mean, they have some young guys who are on the roster now. They have Pavel Zacha. They have a few other Mackenzie Blackwood and a few other guys. they don't have a ton of assets other than giving up future draft picks to get a guy like Fowler or to get a guy like Shattenkirk.
No, they do. They have Josh Jacobs. They still have defensemen down below, and they still have guys, like Santini and Merrill that do have a lot of promise.
But not a ton, Russ. Not a ton of promise.
Well, Jacobs has a ton of – no, not a ton, but, I mean, nobody has a ton of defensemen anyhow. But if a team got Josh Jacobs in return, they'd be happy.
And and if you can get Cam Fowler, and Cam Fowler's price is not ridiculous right now. I mean, Anaheim is desperate. They are getting to the point where they cannot go much longer without moving him because they have guys they've got to sign, and they haven't signed him, and they are at the point where they have to make a move. I would try to find another way, but they seem hell bent on that. This is the way they're going to open up their cap space, and
they want to lock up Lindholm on a long-term deal, and then they want to create the room by moving Fowler. But that doesn't mean you give away Fowler for a second-round pick. I believe it was 2 second-round picks that the Bruins got for Boychuk. And
2 second-round picks for Fowler might not be horrible. I mean,
that's horrible. That's horrible.
You think so?
Yeah, he's an all-star defenseman.
Yeah, he's a top power play guy. I can't do 2 second-round picks for him. That's horrible.
He's an all-star defenseman who's under contract for another 2 years at $4 million per.
But he's available. I mean, the fact of the matter. I mean, let's talk about. They've got other defensemen that they want instead of him. I mean, this is on that particular team. Talk about an all-star, but there's better in their head. There's better defensemen on their team right now.
But
I will say this. I just saw Brandon Montour at the NHLPA event as well, and he does look bigger. He's always been fast. He's a really good puck mover. He's not going to score like a Fowler, though. But he's going to be a little lesser than that, but he's going to be good, and he is big, right? So they probably do like him better long term. So something probably will happen with Fowler. But I looked up Jacobs. He had 5 points in 7 games in the playoffs. It was his first year in the O because he switched out from college. He's got size. I would rather get Jacobs and a second than just 2 seconds. If I'm that team, because at least I'm getting a guy who's only a couple years away. That's all.
No, I mean I could see it, but I don't know. I think it's very rare that players like this are available, and it's really interesting that he's available. Shattenkirk is still available, even though they made him assistant captain. He's still available.
Well, don't you think, Russ, that the last thing that the Anaheim Ducks are going to want in a deal for Fowler, because they have so much depth on defense with Manson and Montour and Theodore and all the guys, it would be another defensive prospect?
They seem to stockpile them, and again, you can't have too many pitchers in baseball. I think they'll stockpile defensemen gladly.
Yeah, I mean they do want scoring, but they I don't know that the team. It depends on who they're talking to.
They're a budget team, and what are they going to spend the most money on in the future? It's got defensemen, especially after the core that they locked up start falling off.
For sure. Well, that's all the time we have. But Mike, thanks for jumping on today. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me.
Anytime. Thanks so much for coming on. And remember, guys, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will be back again tomorrow at our regular time.
If our show isn't banned.
1 o'clock, and we will avoid.
Which is about 11 o'clock now in Russia.
Yes, we'll avoid certain topics tomorrow that involve, or certain videos that involve Russia. Good night, guys. Talk to you later. Yeah.